Some moments in life carve themselves so deep into your heart that no amount of time can smooth them out. The day my daughter told me I wasn't needed anymore was one of those moments. Those words didn't come out of nowhere, though. They had been whispering between us for years before she finally said them aloud. My name is May, but everyone calls me Auntie May now. I suppose it's what happens when you get older. People start seeing you less as a person and more as a role, a warm presence they can borrow comfort from. I never minded it, not really. But there were nights I wished someone would just say my name the way my husband used to, softly like a prayer. He's been gone more than 20 years now. Lydia was only 12 when the cancer took him. She held my hand through the funeral, small fingers clutching tight, and whispered, "Don't cry, Mama. I'll take care of you now." I think I built my whole life around that promise. We were just two women trying to survive the silence he left behind. I worked long hours at the local school, grading papers until my eyes burned, while Lydia did her homework beside me at the kitchen table. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at his photo on the wall, his smile frozen mid-laugh, and I'd have to look away. She was so much like him, kind but stubborn, quick to forgive but slow to forget. When she told me she wanted to be an architect, I smiled and said she could build anything she wanted. "Homes that make people feel safe," she said, eyes shining. I told her she already had. She'd built me. Those years were simple and full. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. We'd sit on the couch on rainy evenings, wrapped in one blanket, watching old movies on a fuzzy TV screen. She'd sing along to the songs, off-key always, and I'd laugh so hard I'd forget to feel lonely. Sometimes I thought about the future, about the day she'd leave, but I never said it aloud. When you love someone that deeply, you don't think about losing them. You just hold them a little tighter each time they pass by. Then came the day she graduated. She looked so beautiful in that black gown, her hair tied neatly, her eyes full of plans. I cried through the ceremony while she smiled and said, "Mom, you can rest now. I'll make you proud." Rest. I thought it meant I could breathe again. I didn't realize it also meant she'd start walking ahead without me. Her first job was in the city. Tall buildings, shiny offices, people who spoke fast and smiled without really seeing you. I helped her move into her new apartment, even though she told me not to fuss. I couldn't help it. I folded her clothes, stocked her fridge, left a jar of her favorite pickles on the counter. Before I left, I cooked her lentil soup, just like she loved it when she was a child. She barely touched it, saying she'd eat later. I pretended not to notice. When I hugged her goodbye, she said, "Mom, don't worry so much. I'll call you every day." She did call at first. Every evening, right before dinner. She'd talk about deadlines, new projects, office gossip. Her voice always sounded rushed, like she was already somewhere else. Then the calls became every few days, then once a week. Eventually, I was the one dialing, waiting through the rings until her recorded voice told me she couldn't talk right now. I told myself she was just busy. That's what mothers do. We make excuses for the distance our children build, because we'd rather believe they're tired than that they're drifting away. When she did visit, she looked beautiful but weary, carrying her world inside that little phone she never let go of. We'd sit at the table, and I'd ask if she was eating properly, sleeping enough. She'd smile politely and say, "Mom, I'm fine. You don't have to worry." But mothers don't stop worrying. It's not something you turn off, even when your child insists she's grown. Each time she said, "I'm not a kid anymore," something inside me cracked a little, like the sound of old wood in a quiet house. 2 years passed before she brought someone home. His name was Ethan. A polite young man with that easy city charm, clean haircut, expensive shoes, the kind of smile that could sell anything. He shook my hand and called me ma'am, which made me feel both respected and ancient at the same time. He talked about his job in marketing, about his parents who lived abroad, about his plans. Lydia watched him the way I used to watch her father, calm, proud, hopeful. I could see it in her eyes. She was in love. I tried to like him, I really did. But something about him unsettled me. Maybe because I could feel my daughter slowly shifting toward his orbit. They spent most of their visit in the living room, whispering and laughing. I'd bring them tea, try to join in, but the conversation always moved too fast, full of people and places I didn't know. When they left, Lydia hugged me quickly, promised to visit again soon, and didn't look back as they walked to the car. That's when I first felt the ache quiet, deep, and sharp enough to stay. Months later, she called to say they were getting married. "We're keeping it small, Mom," she said. "Just close friends and a few family members. You'll love the venue, it's by the river." I told her I'd make her wedding dress like we'd always planned, but she laughed softly and said, "Oh, Mom, I already ordered one. It's easier that way." Easier. The word stung, though I didn't say anything. I congratulated her, wished her happiness, and hung up before she could hear the tremble in my voice. That night, I sat by the window, sewing a little handkerchief with her initials on it. It was all I could make for her now. At the wedding, she looked radiant. When she walked down the aisle, my heart swelled with pride and sadness all at once. She kissed my cheek after the ceremony and said, "Thank you for everything, Mom." Just that. Thank you. Not, "I'll miss you," or "I love you." But I smiled anyway because that's what mothers do. They smile through the ache, through the quiet knowing that a chapter has closed. After the wedding, she moved farther away. Calls became rarer. When I did manage to speak to her, Ethan often answered first, his voice polite but distant. "She's busy right now, ma'am," he'd say. "Can I have her call you back?" She rarely did. I started spending my evenings talking to the kettle as it boiled, to the plants on my porch, to the stars my husband used to name for me. The house felt too big, the silence too loud. Then one afternoon she called unexpectedly. Her voice was bright, nervous. "Mom," she said, "Ethan and I have some news. We're moving." My heart sank, though I didn't even know where yet. "Where to, sweetheart?" I asked. "Across the country," she replied. "It's a big opportunity for him. And I got a position at a new firm too." I tried to sound happy, told her how proud I was, but inside, I could feel the threads of our little world unraveling. "That's wonderful, darling," I said softly. "You'll do great things." "I knew you'd understand," she replied, relieved. "You always do." She moved within a month. I helped her pack, labeling boxes, folding her dresses carefully, though she kept saying, "Mom, you don't have to." When everything was loaded into the truck, I stood on her empty balcony and looked at the view of the river one last time. "It's just a few hours by plane," she said, hugging me. "I'll visit soon." I nodded, pretending not to notice how her eyes were already somewhere else, on the road ahead, not the home she was leaving behind. After she left, I found one of her old notebooks under the couch. Inside, there was a doodle of our house and a note in her handwriting that read, "Home is wherever Mom is." I pressed that page to my chest and cried for the first time in years. Because even then, even knowing how far she was going, I still believed she meant it. I still believed I was needed. But life has a quiet way of teaching you what words can't. Months passed, and her visits didn't come. Her calls became fewer. The seasons changed, and I learned to live inside the echo of her laughter. Yet deep down I still waited for her to say, "Mom, I miss you." I waited because mothers always do. That waiting is what led me to the day it all broke. The day she finally said the words I didn't think she ever could. The day my daughter looked at me, eyes calm and tired, and said, "Mom, you're not needed here anymore." It's strange how the heart can remember sounds more clearly than faces. I can still hear the hum of the ceiling fan in our living room that night, the same one that had been there since Lena was a baby. It rattled slightly on every third spin, like an old friend trying to whisper a secret. The light it threw on the walls was soft and familiar, but the silence between us felt sharp enough to cut through years of love and laughter. Lena sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her face glowing in the blue light. I stood by the kitchen counter, clutching a cup of tea I no longer wanted. I wanted to ask her how work was going, or if she'd eaten, or if she still liked the chamomile tea I used to buy for her when she was stressed. But my words stayed stuck behind a lump in my throat. It wasn't anger. It was something heavier, something like being replaced. When she finally looked up, she smiled politely, like a hostess greeting a guest. "You don't have to stay up for me, Mom," she said. "I'm fine." That word, fine. It used to comfort me when she was a child, when I'd tuck her into bed after a long day and she'd whisper it through sleepy lips. Now it felt like a door being closed softly but firmly in my face. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking of how everything had changed so quietly. No fights, no harsh words, just a slow drifting apart that neither of us noticed until we were standing on opposite shores. When Lena was growing up, I made sure she had everything I never did. Piano lessons, art supplies, good schools. I worked extra shifts at the library, sometimes skipping lunch so I could afford her field trips. Every time she smiled, every time she said, "Thanks, Mom," I felt like the world was right again. But I guess somewhere along the way she stopped needing me the way she used to. A week later, I overheard her talking to her husband, Daniel. I didn't mean to listen. I was just watering the plants outside her living room window. Her voice carried through the open curtains. "I think Mom's lonely," she said. "But she doesn't get it. I have my own family now. I can't keep worrying about her." Daniel replied softly, "She just loves you, that's all." Lena sighed. "Yeah, but love shouldn't feel like pressure." I froze, the watering can trembling in my hand. I felt the water spill over my shoes, cold and unforgiving. That night I cried quietly into my pillow. Not the kind of crying that needs comfort, but the kind that comes from realizing you've become a burden to someone you love. Still, I didn't blame her. Maybe she was right. Maybe love can become heavy when carried for too long. One afternoon I decided to bake her favorite pie, apple cinnamon, with the crust shaped like tiny hearts, just the way she used to ask for it when she was little. The smell filled the house with memories, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe we could go back. But when she came home, she barely noticed it. She just smiled faintly and said, "That's nice, Mom. But Daniel and I already ordered dinner." The pie sat untouched on the counter until midnight. I finally threw it away, whispering to myself, "It's just pie, not a memory." But deep down I knew it was both. Days turned into weeks, and the distance grew wider. I started spending more time in my room, reading old letters and sorting through photo albums. Sometimes I'd find little drawings Lena made as a child, stick figures of us holding hands under a smiling sun. One of them had "Me and Mommy Forever" written in her uneven handwriting. I pressed it to my chest and closed my eyes, wondering when forever had turned into for now. Then came the day everything changed. Lena called me into the living room one morning. Her tone was gentle, but I could sense something behind it. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked in. She was sitting with Daniel, both of them looking serious. "Mom," she began, "we've been talking. We think it might be time for you to maybe have your own space again." I blinked, not understanding. "My own space?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, maybe you could move into a smaller apartment nearby. Somewhere peaceful. You'd have your own privacy and we'd still visit often." Lena added quickly, "It's not that we don't want you here, Mom. It's just, things are getting crowded. And with the baby on the way." The rest of her sentence blurred. My ears rang and I suddenly felt small in the house I helped her build. The same home where I painted her nursery, where I stayed up all night when she had the flu, where I'd whispered prayers for her when she left for her first date. I tried to smile. "Of course, dear. I understand. You need your space." She looked relieved, almost grateful that I didn't argue. But as I turned away, something inside me cracked softly, like an old photograph folding in half. That night, I sat by the window and watched the moonlight spill across the floor. I wondered if she knew how much I still loved her, not out of need or loneliness, but because she was a piece of me I could never let go of. I whispered into the night, "You'll always be my baby, even if I'm no longer your home." And as I said it, a single tear rolled down my cheek, quiet, certain, and full of memories that no one else would ever understand. The next morning felt colder than usual, though the sun was shining brightly outside. I could hear birds singing in the yard, but even their voices felt distant, like they were performing for someone else's morning. I sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of tea in front of me. It had gone cold, but I couldn't bring myself to warm it up again. Lena came in, humming softly. She looked radiant, there was a glow about her, the kind that only comes when life is growing inside you. "Mom," she said cheerfully, "Daniel and I found a lovely place near Maple Avenue. It's close to the park and has a nice little garden. You'd love it." She said it with such excitement that for a moment, I almost believed it was good news. Almost. I smiled weakly. "That sounds lovely." Her eyes softened, but she didn't notice the way my fingers trembled as I lifted the teacup. "I'll help you pack when I get home today," she added. "And Daniel's going to rent a small moving truck tomorrow. You'll be all settled by the weekend." The weekend? Just 3 days. It's funny how a lifetime can fit into a few boxes. That afternoon I walked into my room, my little sanctuary of old books, faded curtains, and a window that had framed years of sunrises and storms. I opened my closet and stared at the rows of clothes, the ones I'd worn through decades of living. Every dress had a story. The blue one I wore at Lena's graduation, the white shawl from my anniversary dinner, the cardigan I knitted during those lonely winter nights after my husband passed. I folded each piece slowly, whispering to myself as if they were old friends I was saying goodbye to. When I opened the dresser drawer, I found a small photo of Lena as a little girl. She was sitting on my lap, her hair tied in messy pigtails, holding a lopsided birthday cake we'd baked together. Her smile in that picture was pure joy, unfiltered, unafraid, unguarded. I ran my thumb over her face, and for a moment it felt like she might speak. "Don't cry, Mama," she used to say whenever I looked sad. "I'll always be with you." But she wasn't. Not anymore. That evening, Lena came into my room holding a cardboard box. "Mom, do you still want to keep all these old letters and trinkets? Some of them look so worn." I looked at her, this grown woman who once hid behind my skirt when she was scared of thunder. "Yes," I said softly. "They're part of me." She smiled gently, but her eyes drifted elsewhere. "Of course," she murmured, though I could tell she didn't quite understand. When she left the room, I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching those letters. One was from her first summer camp, written in a child's uneven scrawl. "Mommy, I miss you. I can't sleep without your stories." That letter felt heavier than all the boxes combined. On the day of the move, Daniel helped load my things into the small truck. He was kind, careful with every box, and I could tell he felt sorry. "We'll visit soon," he said, forcing a smile. I nodded, pretending to believe him. Lena hugged me tightly before I got into the car. "Mom, I really hope you like this place. It's not goodbye, okay? Just a new beginning." Her voice wavered slightly, and for a second I thought I saw guilt in her eyes. But maybe I just wanted to. The drive to the new apartment was quiet. I watched the familiar streets roll by, the old bakery where we used to buy cupcakes, the park where Lena learned to ride her bike, the little library that had been my second home for years. Each place whispered something to me, a memory, a fragment of who I once was. The apartment was small but tidy. One bedroom, a cozy living area, and a window overlooking the street. The landlord smiled politely and handed me the keys. After everyone left, silence filled the room like an ocean. I sat on the couch surrounded by boxes, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. The walls felt bare, unfamiliar. I told myself it was just a house, that love wasn't tied to walls or roofs. But still, I missed the sound of my daughter's laughter echoing through the halls, the warmth of family dinner, the comfort of being needed. That night I cooked dinner for one. The taste didn't matter. Nothing tasted the same when no one was there to share it. I sat at the table and whispered grace out of habit. Then I looked at the empty chair across from me and said softly, "You know, Lena, I used to dream of this day, the day you'd build your own life. I just never realized it would mean losing mine." The next few days passed in quiet repetition. Morning tea, a walk to the park, feeding the pigeons, coming home to silence. The rhythm of loneliness has a strange way of settling into your bones. One afternoon, while walking through the park, I saw a little girl crying on a bench. She couldn't have been more than 6. I sat beside her and asked what was wrong. "My mommy's late," she sniffled. "She forgot to pick me up." I smiled gently and handed her a tissue. "Sometimes mommies get busy, sweetheart, but they never stop loving you." She looked at me with big brown eyes and whispered, "Do you think she'll come back?" I nodded. "Always. Mommies always come back." She smiled faintly, and in that smile I saw a piece of my younger Lena, innocent, trusting, waiting. When her mother finally arrived, she thanked me for keeping her company. As they walked away hand in hand, I felt something shift inside me. Not pain, but something softer, like acceptance. Maybe motherhood wasn't about being needed forever. Maybe it was about teaching them how to live without you, even when it breaks your heart. That night, I sat by the window again, looking at the moon. I whispered into the quiet, "If this is what love becomes, letting go, even when it hurts, then I hope she knows I did it gladly." But deep down, a small part of me still ached for one more day, one more good night, Mom, one more chance to be the home she came back to. A few weeks went by and life began to take on its new shape, quiet, small, predictable. I filled my mornings with little routines to keep the silence from swallowing me whole. I'd water the plants on the windowsill, hum to the radio, and write notes in a journal I called letters I'll never send. It was easier to write to my daughter on paper than to speak to her out loud. Maybe because paper doesn't look away. Sometimes I'd walk to the grocery store just to talk to someone, even if it was just a cashier asking, paper or plastic? It made me feel seen, even if only for a moment. I smiled more than I felt like smiling, so people wouldn't worry. Lena called every few days, her voice cheerful and quick. "Mom, how are you settling in? Everything okay?" "Yes, dear," I'd answer. "Everything's fine." She'd talk about her doctor appointments, about how busy work had been, about Daniel fixing the nursery. I'd listen, nodding even though she couldn't see me, and say, "That's wonderful, sweetheart." When the call ended, I'd just sit there, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. It's strange how hearing someone's voice can make you feel both comforted and lonelier at the same time. Then one evening it happened. I was making soup when the phone rang again. Lena's voice was trembling. "Mom, it's early, but my water just broke. We're going to the hospital." For a moment, I froze, my heart raced, my hands shaking. "Oh my goodness. I'm coming right now." But she quickly replied, "No, Mom, please don't. Daniel's driving fast, and the hospital's strict with visitors right now. I'll call you once the baby's here, I promise." And just like that, the line went dead. I stood there in the kitchen, wooden spoon in hand, the smell of boiling soup filling the room. The silence afterward was unbearable. My daughter was about to bring life into the world, my grandchild, and I wasn't allowed to be there. Not needed, not even now. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window whispering prayers into the dark sky. "Please, Lord, keep them safe. Please let her know I love her, even from here." Hours later, my phone finally buzzed. It was a picture. A tiny baby wrapped in a soft blanket. The caption read, "She's here. 6 pounds 3 ounces. Meet our little Emily." I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. I whispered, "Hello, Emily," as if she could hear me. Then with trembling fingers I typed back, "She's beautiful, my love. I'm so proud of you both." Lena didn't reply. The next day I waited for her call. And the next. And the next. Days turned into weeks before I finally got a text saying, "Sorry, Mom. Been exhausted. We'll visit soon, promise." But soon never came. It was almost 2 months before I finally saw them. Lena arrived one Sunday afternoon with Daniel and little Emily bundled in her arms. I stood at the door, trying not to let my excitement burst out too eagerly. "Oh, my precious girl," I whispered as I reached for the baby. Emily was tiny, warm, and perfect. Her little hand wrapped around my finger, and in that instant my heart found its rhythm again. Lena smiled softly. "She's been fussy lately. Doesn't sleep much." I rocked Emily gently and hummed an old lullaby, the same one I used to sing to Lena when she couldn't sleep. To my surprise, Emily's eyes fluttered closed almost instantly. Lena's jaw dropped. "She never does that. How did you?" I smiled, brushing a soft curl from the baby's forehead. "Mothers know the secret songs, darling. It's in our bones." For the first time in a long while, Lena laughed, a real heartfelt laugh. "Maybe you should move back in," she joked. We both knew it was a joke, but my heart couldn't help but cling to it. Over the next few weeks, she visited a few more times. I'd babysit Emily while Lena and Daniel ran errands. Those moments were the brightest I'd felt in years. Emily would fall asleep on my chest, her tiny breath soft against my skin, and I'd whisper stories to her, stories about her mother, about love, about how even when people drift apart, their hearts never stop reaching for each other. But one day I noticed something. Whenever I offered to come over, Lena hesitated. "Oh, Mom, it's just a mess right now," or "Daniel's family's visiting today." Excuses. Small polite walls. And I realized I was only welcome in measured doses. Just enough to keep me close, but not enough to belong. One evening, while feeding Emily her bottle, I asked gently, "Sweetheart, do you ever miss when it was just us?" Lena smiled faintly, not looking up. "Sometimes. But life changes, Mom. You taught me that." I nodded, pretending to agree, though I'd never said such a thing. I taught her to hold on, not to let go. After they left that night, I sat in the quiet once more. The smell of baby powder lingered in the air, and for a fleeting moment, I pretended Emily was still there, asleep in my arms. I closed my eyes and whispered, "You'll know one day, my darling. You'll understand how much a mother's heart can hold, and how much it can break." I didn't know it then, but that night marked a turning point. Because soon life would test us both in ways we never expected, and it would be Lena, not me, who'd come knocking on my door with tears in her eyes, whispering words I never thought I'd hear again. It was late afternoon when the knock came. The kind of soft, hesitant knock that doesn't come from a stranger, but from someone who isn't sure they're still welcome. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door, and there she was, my daughter, standing in the doorway with swollen eyes, her hair unbrushed, and her hands trembling as she clutched little Emily to her chest. "Lena," I whispered, my heart instantly in my throat. Her lips quivered before the words came out. "Mom, can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, like someone afraid of what memories might rise up to meet her. I noticed Daniel wasn't with her. She sat down on the couch, Emily asleep in her arms. I poured her a cup of tea the way I always used to, and for a while we didn't speak. The silence wasn't cold this time, it was heavy, but it felt shared. Finally, she took a deep breath and said softly, "Mom, I think I made a mistake." I didn't rush her. I just watched as her tears began to fall, silent, shaky, unguarded. She continued, "I thought I could handle everything, work, the baby, the house. I thought I was supposed to. But I can't. I'm exhausted, Mom. I'm angry all the time, and sometimes I look at Emily and feel like I'm failing her." I reached out and took her hand. It was cold. "Oh, my sweet girl," I said quietly. "You're not failing. You're just tired. You've been trying to be everything at once." She shook her head. "No, it's more than that. I didn't want to admit it before, but when I asked you to move out, I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted space, independence, a chance to live my own life. But now," her voice broke, "now I see how much I needed you. How much we needed you." For a long time I just held her hand. I could feel her pain, raw and familiar, like my own heart being handed back to me. "Lena," I said softly, "you don't have to apologize. Every daughter wants to build her own world. I just forgot that letting you go was part of loving you." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "Mom, I was so selfish. I thought you were holding me back, but all you ever did was hold me up." My tears came before I could stop them. "Oh, my dear, motherhood doesn't end when they say they don't need you. It just changes shape. You still carry them, maybe not in your arms, but in your heart." Emily stirred in her sleep, her tiny hand curling against Lena's chest. My daughter smiled weakly and whispered, "She cries all night, Mom. Nothing calms her except that song you sang last time." I reached out my arms and Lena placed the baby in them. I began humming that same old lullaby, the one that had rocked my daughter through her fears, her dreams, and now her motherhood. Slowly, Emily's tiny breath steadied. When I looked up, Lena was watching me with tears streaming down her face. "You make everything feel safe," she said softly, "even when everything's falling apart." I smiled faintly. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We hold the world together quietly, one heartbeat at a time." For a long time she didn't speak. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Mom, can you come home? Please." The words hung in the air, fragile, trembling, honest. My heart leapt, but I didn't want to rush. I looked at her gently and said, "Home isn't a place, Lena. It's where love is needed most. And right now it sounds like both you and Emily need that." She nodded, her shoulders shaking as she began to cry again. I pulled her close, and for the first time in years we held each other without distance, mother and daughter, two hearts mending quietly in the same rhythm. That night we sat together on the couch, Emily sleeping peacefully between us. Lena leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, "for everything. For pushing you away. For forgetting that love doesn't mean control." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I'm sorry, my love, for making you feel like you couldn't breathe. I was afraid to let you grow. Afraid of what life would be without being your everything." She smiled faintly through her tears. "I guess we both had to lose something to understand each other again." I nodded. Sometimes love needs distance to teach us its depth. Outside, the night was calm, the moonlight spilling through the window onto Emily's face. I thought of how life always comes full circle, the way the child becomes the parent, and the parent learns to be a child again in their old age. There was a strange beauty in that surrender. Weeks later, I moved back in, not as someone who belonged by obligation, but as someone invited by love. The house felt different now. Softer, quieter but alive. Lena would ask for advice, and I'd help without taking over. We'd laugh together while folding baby clothes, talk about her dreams, and sometimes, when the baby was asleep, we'd sit by the window with our tea, saying nothing at all, just sharing the silence, healed and whole. One evening, Lena turned to me and said, "Mom, do you know when I realized how much you mean to me?" I shook my head. It was the night I couldn't make Emily stop crying. I held her for hours and nothing worked. And suddenly I started singing your lullaby, and she calmed down. That's when I realized you were still with me, even when you weren't. My eyes filled with tears. That's what love does, darling. It lingers quietly, invisibly in every song, every breath, every heartbeat. She reached for my hand and held it tight. "You're not just my mother, Mom," she said softly. "You're the voice that still guides me when I forget who I am." And in that moment I understood something I wish I had known years ago. We're never truly not needed. We just become part of the air that others breathe, part of the love that lives on quietly when words run out. As I rocked Emily to sleep one last time that night, I whispered softly, "One day you'll grow up and say to your mama, 'You're not needed here anymore.' And when that day comes, she'll smile, because she'll know love doesn't disappear. It just changes homes. And that, my dear ones, is what life teaches us in the end, that letting go doesn't mean losing. It means trusting love to keep living, even in the quiet spaces where our names are no longer called, but our hearts are still felt."